If you found yourself slowing down in the second half of the fight, when you starting out really sharp and you don't know what that is, then that's exactly what we're about to get into today.
If you're a coach and you've been in the corner and you see your fighter and you're like, this kid's in shape, why isn't he able to pull the trigger or execute everything he learned in camp? That's the conversation today. We've got some great questions that we're going to toss at Coach Bradley, and the very first one is, when fighters feel sharp early, Coach, and then they start to lose timing and reads and control by the middle rounds, what is actually breaking down?
So one of the things that you got to pay attention to when a fighter is turning into an entirely different guy the second half of the fight, that's a sign that he is experiencing fatigue in the brain. And that's called cognitive bandwidth, aka cognitive fatigue. And what's going on is he's trained his mind to a particular point. But sometimes a lot of fighters, trainers are working with them and they start really concentrating on more physical conditioning, but they are not focusing on the cognitive side of things. And that, my friend, shows up much more apparent than physical exhaustion, because there are tricks to fool a person when you are actually tired. You can lean, you can get on the corner, you can actually tie up, you can clench, all of those little tricks. But when you're fatigued in a cognitive sense of the conversation, then that is something you can't disguise.
Interesting. So I ask you this, so why doesn't more conditioning and doing more drills fix this when it shows up and rears its ugly head?
Because there's a different passageway to the brain than there is to the body. Right? So the key is understanding the body's going to go through physical changes throughout the fight. Sugar Ray Leonard lost 12 pounds versus Marvelous Marvin Hagler because he was moving so much. That's physical. Your brain is not going to lose weight during the fight because it's enriched with fluid. So what's going on in the passageways is that the conditioning, it's just like saying your ABCs. And then you know those ABCs like the back of your hand. But if I say it backwards,
different.
Neuroplasticity, everything starts to not make sense anymore. So most people can't say their ABCs backwards, but they know them, but they just don't understand what happens. And that's what's going on with the brain. The brain can only calculate so much, and you have to focus on drills like cognitive drills, things that enhance that conditioning for the brain. We read, we do puzzles, we do neurological response game. We call it brain fitness, posit science. That's what you have to focus on more of when you want to expand your cognitive bandwidth.
Fascinating. And real quick, a side note, because I know people are going to be asking, this is exactly the topic that we're going to dive in tomorrow on our live virtual clinic with Coach Bradley. So we'll be putting a link somewhere down below where you'll be able to access that. So moving on, what are the early warning signs that you notice in a fighter when this is starting to break down?
Too much confidence. When a fighter comes out overconfident, that's spilling energy straight out of the gate, and that's what's going to come back and haunt you. You don't always see it in the pre-fight, but what happens is there have been guys who walked out with hip-hop artists and they expel all of that energy, and that's cognitive and physical. And then they get into the ring, and what happens is that draining process happens and it shows up really quick. A lot of people come out fast early, and what we call them is front runners, because everything has to be calculated in boxing, including the pace in which you dominate. Even when you're dominating, there's a pace that you have to actually focus and follow in order to carry that out, because bandwidth cognitively is a real thing. It's just not conversation and hype talk.
Fascinating. So it makes me think of an elite fighter, or about between two fighters. One is elite, and he or she is able to stay calm in the chaos, while another may just completely fall apart and break down. What's the difference there?
There's two approaches. There's the kid who quits school, and there's the kid who stays in school. 9 times out of 9, the kid who stays in school is going to understand process, and they're going to follow that. and they're going to just avidly move up in life, slowly, methodically. The person who actually quit school doesn't have a process. He's quit the idea of process. So everything has to come from the brain in the moment. And it burns the brain down, and therefore he's not following the system. He's relying on talent, and a lot of athletes are relying on talent, and they burn out over the course of the fight because they have to keep coming up with an idea, where the other individual is following a process that he follows every day the exact same way, so it's stamped in his mind what he has to do, even in turmoil.
So I would also add, when even the skill set is equal between both fighters, that elite fighter really raises, above the top in that regard. So why is it so difficult as a coach or even as the fighter to recognize this in the gym or in training camp, but then on fight night it's so obvious prior to that ring walk, prior to hopping over those ropes?
You won't have the warning signs in the gym unless you got a lot of experience as a coach and you understand that this guy is doing everything here properly. Now, here's where the kicker comes into play. When you're doing things right and then on fight night it falls apart, that means you could have left it in the gym. And that means you physically overtrained the person trying to match with another person that could be at an A or even an A+ level. Therefore, you find guys losing because they don't understand preparation. They just don't understand process and systems, and that's where that comes into play. They were typically training for conditioning and skills, while the other person is training for the transition into state. They can perform under a particular state, and when you don't have those measurables, you fall short on fight night because your measurables, your actual analytics of the fighter were not checked off. They just looked to the eye that they were on point. But when you start doing the metrics, you'll start finding out that they were cognitively falling off. They got hit with too many jabs, and they were not offensively effective throwing enough jabs. There's a consistent flow chart of things that you have to check on the database. And sometimes we get caught up in the physical, the skills, but boxing is a science. It's not about skills.
Yeah, so that's fascinating. It's an interesting perspective, and we are live on a couple of platforms right now. So for the folks that are watching live, I can see a lot of likes and thumbs up that there's a lot of head nodding going on about now. You can relate to this. So I wanted to mention again, tomorrow we are doing a live virtual clinic. We are going to, this isn't about drills and skills. This is about everything you're talking about now, an understanding, a deeper understanding of the science, and going back to the why and the when of the pillars and principles that you've built Master Boxing around. So once again, here's the thing, we're keeping it tight. We're keeping it a tight crew. This is a masterclass type of format. So if you are a coach or a trainer or a pro fighter, the invitation is open to you. So somewhere around here, you'll have a link to be able to jump in with us. I think there are a handful of seats left. So we've got some more room, and we definitely want you in that room.
Everybody goes to the gym with the same initiative. But what happens is there are people who already have the systems embodied. The Bible of boxing, understanding styles, understanding pressure, but understanding training states. The states that you have to train in, your checklist, your metrics, understanding those finite things. Taking a fighter into a fight that matters, then they come up short because of, the cognitive bandwidth or their nervous system's not being hardwired properly. And then it shows up on fight night. You see, the thing about this is I operate and I perform in places where mistakes are expensive. So we cannot make mistakes. All right, the price tag's too high. So if you don't want to pay price, make sure you tune in tomorrow. Yeah,
so that you teed me up for my next question, because I wanted to ask you, when you are observing other coaches and they are trying to adjust their fighter mid-fight and they're breaking down, what's the biggest mistake you see them making, trying to adjust that fighter that's kind of crashing mid-fight?
Okay, look, once again, crashing is here, and they're training them from the motivational standpoint. Throw more punches. Come on, you got to let hands go. All of those different kind of signals is signals that the coach is going through something too. He's going through a period where he's realizing he's not as well educated as he thought he was. Therefore, you got to have that experience around you. Therefore, it's good to be a part of places that have that institutionalized knowledge that you're going to run into. Those things are going to happen. So when he's trying to tell him what to do late, he doesn't understand. It's not physically most of the time. You see, you can't put it on the skills. You've worked on the skills. So boxing isn't just about physical skills and techniques. You're training skills where we're installing. Because everybody has the same plays, same postures. Everybody in the world is using the same techniques and mechanics. The difference is you are memorizing skills and techniques. We're installing. That's the difference.
That's very well said. That made it super clear. So my question for you would be, is who's the person that recognizes this situation and potential trouble early, and those it takes losing to figure it out?
The person that understands this is a person that didn't drop out of school. And now we have a school for boxing. There's no excuse, because when a guy recognizes it, he understands the signs. He understands the process that he has his fighter in. We don't go into the fight trying to fight the other guy's fight. We go into the fight following the boxing playlist in which that we have. That's why it's the Bible of boxing. Understanding what you already have to do. Let them have to adapt. You're going to constantly be first. So they're the ones that's going to have to go through having the sympathetic nervous system triggered, because they're not prepared for what you're bringing for battle, because they have to adapt to what you do. Even if that's throwing feints and throwaway punches, setting traps, even when you're on offense. This is masterful boxing, and this is the process that fighters go through the educational system that the coach put them through, if they have one. So if you want to prevent throwing out instructions that really don't matter, don't have a process, and you're going to find yourself doing that. It's not rocket science. We're all doing the same skills. The difference is you are actually just training it into them. You're getting it into their muscle memory. We're installing it. Cognitive bandwidth is a real thing. And if you don't think so, go look at all the fighters that didn't show up in the second half of your fight. Look at the guys who can no longer read their opposition but are reacting to them. They don't have the ability to anticipate, period, point blank. That's where everybody's breaking down for the most part. You see it every fight. So if you want to adapt and adjust the right way, you have to operate from a clinical standpoint. That, my friend, is the advice that I drop in your hat.
Yep. And I see all the likes and loves going. I think that some signals are being sent right now for those of you guys who are really in the game and have the responsibility of these athletes on your shoulders. So for just a second, Coach, what I'd like for you to do is speak to who this clinic tomorrow, who it's for, who it's not for, first of all. Let's get that
If you're
addressed.
not in competition for real in professional ranks of boxing, or heading into the professional ranks of boxing, if you haven't been a part of the sport for a minimum of 5 years, this isn't for you. This is about people who are actually in this part of their career, because this is what matters at this level of the game. High level boxing, not I stand in front of the mirror and box. This is for people who are professional in the sport.
So who would you say absolutely must be in the room?
If you're coaching a fighter and you're responsible for a fight team, and you want to make sure that there is no blind spots in your fight team, then this is perfect for you, because this will tell you things that you don't have the actual time or bandwidth to actually accrue. So this is just filling in those gaps that you've been working on. You've been consistently developing the athletes properly. There are just other measurables that you have to implement.
Great.
So if you're in that position, that's who it's for. And I look forward to
I appreciate
educating.
you read my mind for the next question, and he didn't know what my questions were going to be today. Why would a team need to make sure that they get this in their programming, in their hands, so to speak, now in 2026 rather than later?
Because the landscape, everybody has AI on their phone now. In 1997, everybody started getting Google. It's because the old way is gone. Now we have access to expert levels of training and checklists to kind of be our parameter, our marker, the thing that actually make the dream come true. You don't want to learn and lose in boxing right now. You don't want to lose in boxing and say, we can figure it out, because what happens is teams will definitely dissipate because there are too many options out there. We get guys all the time reaching out in our DMs for help and willing to leave the team. I don't coach personally, physically with people in the gym for fight camps unless it's on an order, meaning coming in as someone who can help orchestrate and get their system in place for major top fights, main cards. So, that's pretty much my angle on that.
No, I love it. I love it. So what I would say as we kind of wrap this up is, if any of this sounded familiar to you, the clinic that we have going on tomorrow is your place to slow it down and get a grip on it. Being in a closed room, so to speak, it's going to be live via Zoom. To be able to talk to you, we have people already submitting their questions, and to be able to get those answered live and come away with some real...
If you guys got questions, you can drop them. But like fight teams, you're systematic in bringing in people. The objective is to have your own boxing system, one that's been qualified and is generational. It's 5 generations deep. Excellent. So those of you who are in that position now, that will be the last piece to complete and solidify your progressive ladder, because you can train your fighters in the system as well. So I always recommend the fight teams, myself 20 years ago, that you always have something to make your job easier, and then process, because process is always going to beat talent 100% of the time, no matter what you say. Period, point blank. Bandwidth matters. Systemizing things shrinks the bandwidth that you use. Understanding hardwiring the body. These things matter. And if you don't, just keep watching the loser every weekend, every fight. It's because what they lack, it's what they are missing. And so this is it. So that's what we're going to go over tomorrow. The things that have not been accessible from us as coaches in the sport of boxing. Now you're getting full access. Yeah,
we'll see you tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be there. Link will be down below.